economic cycles. Basically, this is a notion taken from the economic theory, and though initially I joined TikTok on the wave of my interest in developing a course in sociology, I think that one can also borrow sometimes from economics that I think can be also broadened to society, so that we can think of economic cycles also in social terms, and then also maybe analyzing last, let's say, 30, 40 years in terms of both the economic cycles and social cycles. Since, let's say, if one looks at the movements, say, of the capital markets, and then if one thinks, let's say, maybe from the early 90s to the late 90s, and maybe to the year 2000, one can speak of that as one, let's say, cycle, and when one would observe a lot of upward movement and then a downward movement, and so that one can strain to explain that. But then, almost exactly 8 years after, there was another, let's say, global crisis in 2008, and there are some articles, some works done on that, explaining why it had happened. And then after that, there would be a sort of reaccumulation in the financial markets. Let's say the stock market would continue to grow, etc., etc. And most of the theories that essentially would be circulating in the media would not necessarily refer to the economic cycle as a way to explain what is going on. One would speak of bubbles, which is basically, I think, the same thing, because the bubbles tend to be, let's say, blown up, and then they can actually deflate rather quickly. And I think this is what has been going on in recent decades, and there is no way outside of the bubble cycles. So that economic cycles do exist in that respect, so that one can say that maybe there was in the public speech about all that. There was an exchange of terms. There was an effort not to speak in terms of the economic cycles for one reason or another. And I think that social point of view, social theoretical point of view can help with that. But then again, if one looks, let's say, from 2008 until 2016 and what has been going on internationally, one can then think of maybe, let's say, social implications of, let's say, or international implications of the changes in the economic cycles as they go essentially up and down, even though not in the way that are easy to, let's say, to understand, ascertain. And then if one thinks about last 8 years, one can also speak about certain changes. And once again, one does not necessarily have to be overly overwrought about all that, but then what happens is that those cycles somehow do exist, and then to explain, let's say, what one sees in the media, what one sees in the everyday life, in some places or others, it can be, it may be difficult without referring to maybe the globalization as it existed, such as, let's say, maybe industrial accumulation in Asian countries as let's say, supply chains become extended internationally, adding weaknesses in some places for some countries, and then adding, let's say, strengths and advantages in other places, in other countries, and maybe also in other cities. So it means that there is a sense of maybe the displacement of the regular symptoms of the upsides and downsides of economic cycles as they exist. And then there could be not necessarily enough understanding how those two actually play out, on the one hand financially, and on the other hand in real terms, in terms of what one encounters when one goes shopping, or let's say when one goes into the real estate market in this city or that city. And in that respect, it is something to reflect upon. as let's say as media coverage and podcasts and let's say and podcasts they do oftentimes do research and do incisive analysis, but then I still think that there is a space between that and some sort of a maybe more broader point, or let's say a broader point of view that one would need to construct across those insights, across those sides.